why should you pick a doctor who's a jerk? People often try to pick the nice doctor. I would say, yeah. I mean, if you don't know anything about the medical field, that makes sense. But in reality, the nicest doctors I've met are usually the stupidest. And me and my friend both agree we want to pick the jerk. You know why? Because we actually want good medical care. So let me explain to you something. So if you're a doctor, you got to be good at one of two things, preferably both. One is you got to be good at your bedside manner, how you communicate with the patient, your rapport. The second thing you should be good at is your medical knowledge, your technical skills. So surgeons, when they do all this suturing stuff, they should be very good, you would hope. You'd hope they've done many surgeries, have lots of successes. But there are some doctors who are jerks. Why do I say you should pick them? Because it's the easiest way to ensure that somebody's good at that technical aspect, at the medical knowledge aspect. Because if they're bad in both, they wouldn't have a job. They must be able to compensate by being good at their technical side for their lack of people skills, right? Let me explain it to you further. For example, I can't really write very well. I mean, I could scratch it. I could sometimes make out my own writing. Sometimes I can't. I don't even know why I write many times. But I could type pretty fast, 100 words per minute. So that takes care of that. I have something to compensate for it. Some people can't write. They can't type. So they could dictate. They speak. And in the olden days, you have somebody who transcribes it for you. Nowadays, you use Dragon or some other software. So they could use another method. But if you're a doctor and you're not good at anything, if you don't have people skills and your patients hate you because of that, and you're medically bad, they'll get rid of you. So if you want to guarantee, as much as there is any guarantee in life, a doctor who is good medically, pick the guy who's a jerk. So you may say, okay, but aren't there better ways of choosing this? Like, can't you look at their school? Can't you look at their residency? Look at their educational background? And sure, you could try it, but you know what? There's always the good people at Harvard and the not so good people at Harvard. And I dare say at my medical school, which isn't particularly famous or anything, the best people are better than the lowest people at Harvard. And you don't know, right? They could be from a good school or a bad school, but they're still an individual. Right? You may say, well, how about somebody whose background matches mine? We have similar background. We could talk about stuff. And that's all very well and good. Many immigrants go to doctors who are from the same country. They have a lot of understanding of their culture. It's much easier to get along. I completely understand. But let me ask this question. So what's easier for you? To learn to communicate with a jerk or to go to medical school? Do residency? What do you think? Do you remember a guy named Jiro? I Dream of Sushi. So he's a very famous chef in Japan. Michelin actually took him off their list because they couldn't actually they couldn't actually get any reservations. They said there's no point anymore because these have to be available. But it's funny because I've been reading about people who have gone there and they say he's actually a very demanding chef. He expects you to eat it very quick with your hands. You have to know proper technique, all that stuff. And so a lot of these are all foreigners, basically. They didn't like eating there, some of them. Some of them do still. But the thing is, I remember reading his book and looking through it, and he was talking about how he learned so much from his customers. So some customers managed to get through to him. Obviously, not all customers. But it goes back to the question, is what do you go to a doctor for? Do you go to a doctor for their medical expertise, that they know stuff, they might diagnose you? Or do you go to a doctor just to chit-chat? They might know something medical, they might not. Because if you want to go to a doctor who actually tries really hard, who actually is invested, the people I've met who have less people skills, they're the ones who are better at that. They actually have something positive, and that's called they're not afraid of making other people upset. They'll push to get you that procedure that they think you need done. The nice doctor, yeah, they'll push a little bit, but they want to be nice. They want everybody to like them, right? So they won't push too hard because it's just the patient. You value your relationship with your colleague more, right? But these doctors who are not so good with people, who are somewhat of a jerk, they're going to push for it because they're like, hey, my patient needs it. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to ask your colleague. Do you want to do it or not? It's not very nice, but you want somebody who's not very nice, who's on your side, who knows their medical stuff. You don't want somebody who's just all smiles and friendly, who has no brains, right? So this is why, if you had to choose the one who's a jerk. Your chance of getting somebody who's medically proficient is much higher. Sure, you may think, I have good success. I could review their medical stuff. I could look at their character, how nice they are. And sure, you may hit that jackpot, that 1 in a million, the doctor who's superbly nice and who's great medically. And yes, I've met a few of them. Let's see. 3 of them in my career, in my 10 plus years in the medical field. So yes, there's a probability. It's just very low. So you better prepare to break out your medical textbook and do some reading when you have your doctor, who's just very nice, but doesn't know the medical stuff.